Welcome to Enjoy Fort Wayne. This episode is brought to you by the Wailanai Farmers Market and highlights the 350 vendors that make up the #1 market in the state of Indiana.
So my name is Marie Heimann and my shop is Fawnly, like a baby deer with an LY at the end.
And I love that. How many times do you tell that story? Because the first time I asked you, I was struggling with asking how to spell it or whatever, and you just went into that right away.
A lot of times people think I'm saying family.
Like you have a speech impediment or something?
Yeah, it's like they've never heard that word before, so I get that I have to clarify. Yeah. And it actually, I mean, it is inspired by baby deer, so I like to emphasize that.
Okay, well, I guess before we start anything, let's just get into that story, right? Okay. You might as well.
Yeah, that really opens up the whole story.
Okay, so, let's get into it.
It's a good segue. Okay, so I have 5 boys, but I was pregnant with my 3rd boy about 8 years ago, and I had this condition where I was itching all the time, and I thought it was this condition called cholestasis. So that puts the baby in danger around 37 weeks. You need to induce, otherwise there's a greater chance of losing your baby. And that gave me great anxiety.
You think?
And not only that, but it kind of felt like a crazy person because I couldn't stop itching anywhere on my body. It started with my palms and my feet, and then it was just like everywhere.
So you would just be all like
if I drove anywhere, I'd be trying to itch while I was driving, and it was like
using the steering wheel to itch.
Yes, and
my hand has itched before, not at
you
that.
Had to do that before,
but I've done that, and so I immediately thought of that, like, ooh,
I know all the
to always
tricks
do that?
of how to itch when you are in a tricky situation. And I would go somewhere and I'd take my shoe off and I'd start itching. So it was like, and I had I had 3 kids under 3, so I had 2 tiny babies that I would take with me, and I'd be itching and it would be terrible. So I basically became like a hermit and stayed in my home all the time.
Oh, man.
And I knew I needed to take up some kind of hobby. And I've always been a creative person, but I would never have described myself as an artist. Mm-hmm. But I began to do like hand lettering. It was like on Pinterest and YouTube, you could find tutorials. It was kind of blowing up a little more than it is now. It was like the height of it. And I just started to learn how to do it from watching these tutorials, and I would letter scripture or quotes from different books I was reading. And as I would letter, I was like meditating on the words as well, and I'd stopped itching. Wow. And same thing with painting. I'd never painted before. And I did watercolor. That's how I started. And I would just start to paint. And I started with flowers. And the same thing, I wouldn't itch. So it was just like, I say like my art is my prayer. That is what it became. Because anytime I would paint or do any form of art, it was like I was letting it all go. And I was surrendering. And I just didn't itch anymore. So all of that anxiety would go away. So then I was like, okay, I just got to do this all the time.
Well, that's the podcast. Thanks for, geez, where do we go from there?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Wow. Okay. So now we can rewind a little bit. So, because normally we kind of get to know you a little bit more, where you're from originally and things like that. But with the spelling of having to spell it and explain it, I wanted to get in that story right away.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But let's rewind now. So Are you originally from Fort Wayne?
I'm from Michigan.
Okay.
Southwest Michigan. And yeah, my husband is from Decatur, Indiana.
Okay.
So we met in Ohio.
Of course. He's from Indiana. You're from Michigan. Of course you'd meet in Ohio. That's the way it works.
That's exactly how it works.
State law. If you're going to get married, you got to... Okay.
Yeah, so we met at a tiny little Catholic college in Steubenville, Ohio.
Okay.
Franciscan University.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you moved to Fort Wayne area.
Yes. Yeah. Well, first we went back to Michigan. we started dating in college, but then we actually broke up twice, and then we eventually got married, and then we moved to Indiana. So we have a wild story too, but that's for another time.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So you found your way to Indiana.
Yeah.
And we know the story now of kind of how everything started. Let me ask you this. At what point after the baby was born then, because this was in pregnancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the baby's born now at this point, and you've realized, okay, this is more than just a medicinal thing. This is something I need to continue doing. Is that right?
Yeah. So actually, I'm realizing now I didn't even explain where Fawnly came from. So I can kind of move into that. But so baby was born. I continued to itch for a few weeks. And so I continued to paint. And honestly, like I just grew more and more in love with doing it, with painting and lettering. And I would just like wear him on me, and I would paint while I was like wearing him. And I, to this day, he's my most creative child. So that's kind of awesome. He like caught the bug while he was like close to me.
Yeah.
And I started giving away my art to people, and they kind of, I think it was mostly my family, and I think that they were just being really kind and telling me it was good, but it kept me going. So I'm very grateful for that.
Sure.
But I would like just make it for them, and they all responded really well to it. And so I felt like, okay, maybe I need to like make this into something and start a shop. And so the name came to me very organically and very naturally, and it just felt right because there's this psalm in the book of Psalms in the Bible that is, as a deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs for you, O God. And that spoke to me so much because I felt like not just a deer, but like a baby deer, just meek and weak and like incapable of taking care of themselves through that suffering I was going through, and that just like waiting for those streams to come, just like needing that relief. And that's, what the shop became for me. It was like this place of peace and tranquility, and where I felt like I was meeting God and being taken care of. And through that and sharing, my art with other people, I really felt like he was meeting them too through it.
Yeah. Wow. So I grew up in church. My dad's a retired pastor, and as the deer panteth for the water, so my soul longeth after thee is a song that they would always play, like while they're taking the offering, the worship team would like play that song like a million times a year. And I'll never be able to forget those exact lyrics. Like, even though they're different than what your translation, whatever, was a little bit different, but the way I said it, I just rattled it off, didn't I? Like
it sticks with you.
It just sticks with you. Exactly. Like I remember the melody. I remember the lady who sang it, how she sung it. Like I'll just always remember that. So when you pointed out that verse, it like hit me kind of, and that's certain verses or certain words or
imagery,
text from a poem or whatever will just always stay with you. And that is cool to think about how it hit me. Obviously it hits other people too. And so that's a really cool story. That's awesome. So okay, then what was the point where in this whole thing you're thankful for your family supporting and whatever, but there had to be a point where you're like, okay, I would like to try to take this to the next level. Was there one thing that you can pinpoint and say, yeah, I remember thinking it was like this, or just all of a sudden were you just in it and realized, wow, I'm doing it?
Yeah, I would say most things in my life happen very organically, and it's like I kind of just dive headfirst into them, not realizing like what I'm getting myself into. I've gotten myself into some very precarious situations.
Maybe better that way, because had you known, you would have jumped.
I don't think I would have.
And even though you have some scars, it's still worth it though, right?
100%, yeah. So
then I was going to ask you then about the idea of starting a business, starting this project and having it, make a little bit of money. I don't think any single vendor at our market is a millionaire based off of their company, right? But to make a little something, obviously there's something to be said about that. If someone came to you, they weren't in your niche, they knew you and they thought, I'm gonna do underwater basket weaving, but I want to make money from it, I'm gonna do it myself. What advice would you give to someone who was wanting to start on their own the way that you did?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, I think it's really important to love what you're doing and to be passionate about it. Because when you're doing something just to make money or to, I don't know, for like the attention or whatever the other motivation would be, I feel like it becomes, it's work. It's joyless. And I would say the driving force in my shop is that I am so passionate about it. And I think that's the only reason why people respond so well to my work, is because so much of my heart and soul is in it. And I feel that way about all the shops that the market, and so I feel like if you feel really passionate about what you're doing and you feel like it will add value to the world, then that's where I would start, is to be passionate about it. And then secondly, don't, like I did this kind of on accident because it's just the way I'm wired, but to not think about down the road like too far. I mean, it's good to be prepared. It's good to have all your ducks in a row, but also it's okay
and to have goals.
And
have goals, I would think
it's
goals. Okay, but you can't get bogged down.
No, and I would. You can only prepare so much. My sister just launched her own business, and she was kind of like initially inspired by me just kind of taking that leap of faith. And she's a planner, and she just prepared and planned every single little detail. And I was like, all right, when are you going to start? And she was just like, I know, I gotta jump. And she did, and she's doing so well. But I just feel like whether you are prepared or not, like, people ask me all the time, how'd you get your Etsy started? Because that's where I started before I even did markets. And I just say, like, I just I figured out, I Googled how to make a listing, and I listed something and someone bought something. And then social media as well. So I'd say get on social media, promote your work. You don't have to brag about yourself. Just show your work and let it speak for itself.
Right.
Whatever it is.
I like the idea of there's that happy medium of like planning, because if you fail to plan, then you should plan to fail. Mm-hmm. But you can only do that so much, because you're always just going to be on the diving board, just inching, and then you're stuck if you don't actually jump.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of, okay, at some point you do have to jump, even if you don't have all your ducks in a row.
Right.
They'll never be in a row.
No, they won't.
Not all of them. So just get a few that you need, and just know that you'll take some nicks and cuts, but it'll be worth it. And so that's pretty cool that your sister can always look to you as knowing that, oh, you were the motivation. Like, that's kind of cool. It's
super cool for me, because she was always my motivation. So the fact that I could give back to her in some tiny way was really special to me.
Very cool.
Yeah. So there's one more thing. Can I share one more thing about what you said?
You can share 10 more things.
Okay. I just feel like that messing up and failing is like, it's a part of the gig, and it's really important. I think it's like not just, it'll be okay, like you'll get past. It's so important to getting better as a business owner, and as an artist, as an anything. Like those failures teach us things, and we get better. And I think sometimes we get in our own way, and we get in our head, and we just think like, okay, I'm not meant to do this because I screwed that up. And I think if you pay $100 for a booth somewhere, and like you don't sell anything, you don't even make your money back, don't just stop doing it because of that one event. There's so many factors that go into why you might have not been successful that night. And I just think failure is a part of the journey, a really important part.
I love that. I'm glad that you made sure to put that in there.
Yeah.
Because that is huge. And I think a lot of vendors can tell you that they have, we could start, if you want, we can do another podcast called failures in vending, and we would like blow up and have like
So
a million views, right?
100%.
I mean, how many vendors could I go to at the market and be like, hey, we're doing a new podcast about failures. Do you have any? Like, can you imagine the conversations? Like, oh my gosh, yeah, I got 37. Is that?
Yeah, which was great because they're still doing it. You know?
And you learn so much from it. And like each year, okay, I'm not going to make 15 of these. I'm only going to make 5 of these, but I'm going to make 30 of these because I know. But you only knew that because you failed when you weren't ready. You didn't have enough of these things, or you had too many of these, or whatever it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
So people that are vendors that have milk, they had too much or not enough, or people who made this very T-shirt I'm wearing, they didn't make enough of these, or too many, or whatever it is.
Yep.
You have to at some point just go and do and fail, because it's about the journey of getting there, of what you learned through that.
Yes.
So I'm glad that you pointed that out, because that's a huge one.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about the market in general. Was the Wildlanai Farmers Market the first time that you branched out to a market? Was there other ones that you did first? How did you find out about this market?
No, Wildlanai, I think, was the first market I ever did. It was on Bar Street, and it was across from where I am now. I have the same spot every year, thankfully. But it was 8 years ago, and I was in a pretty good spot, and it was the first, and I think for that to be your first experience, it's really a good experience, because even back then,
spoiled.
it was still really good.
If the Wildlife Farmers Market was your first experience at a market, then you, my friend, are spoiled.
Yeah, it's not a great representation of how markets always pan out,
Right.
There have been a lot of flops since then, but it's almost always, a good experience at Wildlanai.
So you have been vending for how long at the market then?
For 8 years.
Okay. So I would say, we've had quite a few. We talked before the show. You have to go back and watch some of these other episodes, and you'll see that a lot of the vendors are way newer.
Yeah.
Than you. So we've had a few that are longtime vendors, but I will ask you then to dive in a little bit deeper into vending at this market. What would you tell someone? They have their business, they're doing okay, they're ready to vend at the market. What are some advice that you would give to new vendors, even the vendors who have been on this podcast and now watch a lot of the episodes? You're speaking to them too. So new vendors, what would you like to tell them?
Well, I guess if you've not set up before, it kind of does depend, like if you set up indoors or outdoors, because it's a different experience.
It's a different animal for sure.
It is. But I like to, I don't do this every time anymore, because I've gotten a pretty good feel for how I want my booth to look. I do think aesthetics are important, and I think that's true whether you're selling eggs or you're selling art. Because you're selling your brand at the same time. You're drawing people in, and you want people to stop at this booth, not that one that sells very similar products, So I would say and it's okay if this doesn't look perfect the first time. I wouldn't stress about that. Mine started out like okay, and it's gotten better over the years. But I just think, to have something that reflects your own style, that is really nice to look at, and I just like to give them an experience when they come in, when people that are shopping walk into my booth. I want them to feel like so many pretty things to look at. Like, where do I start? And I just feel like comfortable and, like a cozy kind of atmosphere. So I have a lot of like neutrals and a lot of like natural elements like baskets and stuff like that, some wood. And I just think that that's important. No matter what your product is.
Yeah. I think people can overthink because it's their brand. It's all that stuff that you said, and they want it to be perfect. And so I think the biggest takeaway is probably don't worry about being perfect your first time, but maybe look to improve.
Yep.
Would you agree that in your first 4 times of doing it, whether that ends up being 1 month, because you don't have to go every week. So whatever those first 4 times is, would you say that each time you learn something different and it gets better because you're like, oh yeah, this time I want to bring this, or this time I don't want to set up my account to do this way, I want to do it, or whatever,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Oh yeah, 100%. I feel like and especially because you can kind of, there's a little bit of like, around this time of year, it's more busy, and there's more like, this will be when kids come, and so I can cater to them a little bit. But for the most part, any market, especially the YLNA market, it's kind of hard to like know the like the algorithm, like the rhythm and flow. Like
Yeah.
I talk to other vendors and we're just like, it could be 10 people, it could be 20. I have no
never
idea.
know.
Like, who shopped from you that day. Like it's hard to know, but each time you can take something away, you can, I even down to the little details. I'll think like, I think it was better that I stood up more than sitting down. And that even though there were a lot of like dull moments, it's best for me to get off my phone and not be distracted, and to interact with people walking by, because the more I interact with people walking by, the more likely they are to come and shop. I don't like to be like, let me tell you about my product, but I will just say hello and smile at them, and that I have seen that draw them in, where I feel like they were just going to keep walking.
absolutely. So be friendly, step out of your comfort zone a little bit, and you never know who's going to stop by who wouldn't have had you not said anything.
Yes.
If you just let them go or whatever, get out there a little bit. In your very first time, it was probably difficult to do.
Yeah.
Now, 8 years in, it's probably easier
Yes,
to do.
100%. Yeah.
So, and that's fair,
It
but
gets
you got
better.
but you got to start somewhere.
You do. Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that's awesome. So, I usually end the podcast with one question, and judging by our conversation we had before the show, I'm assuming you have no idea what the question is, which is amazing. That's how I prefer it.
Okay.
Once you've done 50 of these, people start to know what the question is.
Okay.
However,
Yeah.
I love that you are clueless. And now you're nervous.
Okay. Bring it on.
All right. So it is putting you on the spot, but it'll be fun.
Okay.
So we are pretending that the mayor has tasked you with coming up with a sign in which the whole 260 can see. So it's imaginary. It's going to go on the biggest building, or the Fred Grody plane. It's
Yeah.
going to like have it, something, whatever it is. But you get to come up with what it says.
Ooh. Okay.
So yeah, it's putting you on the spot, but most people don't know it's coming, and I love to
Yeah.
see the raw, like, because you can go,
Interesting.
I'll give you a little bit of help.
Okay.
You can go one of two ways. One, you can go, hey, this could be a big marketing thing for you
Yeah.
for the business,
Right.
because if everyone's going to see it.
Yeah.
Or you can just go, I just want to show love to people, and it'll just be a personal message. It has nothing necessarily to do with the business,
Yeah.
but it's more just like your personal, almost like a personal mantra or personal feeling that you would like everyone to see.
Okay.
So you could go from like a marketing kind of ploy that way, or you can just go from the heart and just give something that you'd want to share with a lot of people.
Okay, so for clarity, this is for my shop personally or for the market in general?
The mayor doesn't care about that. He's just tasked you with
All
coming up with a sign. So that is for your interpretation.
Okay.
That's what I love about the question. Just, it's up to you. He just said, hey, I trust your judgment. The whole city's going to see this, though. Off you go.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't know what the exact like wordage would be, but I would definitely want like images of some of the products that we sell at the market. And then I would say something like, wouldn't you rather it be from someone you know? And like, or something more personal, just something that, just this idea of like shop local, buy local. That's such a buzzword and kind of become cliche. But once you see like who it's from, and the person that it's from, and then you're giving a gift from someone you know to someone you love,
Yeah.
I just think that it's that much more meaningful of a gift than
For
something
sure.
you got from Amazon. which is fine.
I think it's cliche until your best friend owns the ice cream shop.
Exactly.
Then of course you're going there and you'll
personal.
tell friend, like, it's
Yeah.
cliche until you know someone that makes the Etsy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's always a cliche until it hits home to you.
Yep.
So I think that's huge. And in a city like Fort Wayne, it's very easy to be connected. This city just finds a way where you know this person or this person. Oh yeah, they're at the farmers market. Oh yeah, I know them.
Yeah.
How that's not that weird of a story, right? That happens all the
All the
time,
time,
I'm
right.
sure.
Yeah.
Where you meet someone and you didn't realize that your husband used to work with them.
Yep.
And you're like, what?
exactly. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in Fort Wayne, it's conducive to that.
Yeah.
For as many people, how many people live here, you wouldn't assume that it's like that.
Right.
And it just is. And so to buy local, yeah, it's the cliche, but it's so easy to be affected in a positive way from it.
100%. And then I mean, you hear so often in like news and media, like documentaries, how important it is to know like where your food came from, where, you know, and just to know like the person who poured this candle and picked out the scents for this candle and the person who like literally harvested this from their own garden. It's just, it's so, like literally organic, but it's so organic. It's so personal and intimate. And I just feel like there's no greater way to show someone you love them than to connect them to a greater community.
That's huge. Yeah, I love that. And again, in this city, you can do it
Yeah.
easier than in a lot of other places.
Yeah.
So let's take advantage of it. Speaking of taking advantage, let's take advantage of your social medias. So will you tell just where we can find you and all that?
Okay. So my website is fawnly.com. So FAWNLY.com.
Okay.
It'll take you to my Etsy. And then I'm on Instagram at Fawnly Prints. Not like the singer, but like PRINTS.
Yeah, throw that in there. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I started out just doing art prints, but I do blankets and stuff now. So,
Yeah.
and then on Facebook, it's the same. It's just that / or whatever it is. Fawnly Prints.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. So, we are winding down the winter market, but you plan on being
Yep.
the summer, right?
Every Saturday.
And every Saturday, remember, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Wildlife Farmers Market. Thanks for being on today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
This podcast is brought to you by Coraggio Media. The show is edited by me and sponsored by the Wildlife Farmers Market. Follow them on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest updates. We will see you next week, where we will be sure to show you how you can enjoy Fort Wayne.